So with a poor result against Tottenham the other day, an underwhelming win against Wolves, and with Luke Shaw and Mason Mount out for a few weeks now, plus Højlund is still injured, it's not looking good for United. But my question is, how many excuses do they have left? So let's get into it. You just got to start this saying it's very early, it's 2 games in, and people always overreact to this point. However, the signs just aren't looking good for United because it was a slow start last season, and then they eventually got, they started looking good. However, you'd have thought they'd taken that similar form to this season, plus with a new goalkeeper, plus with a brand new, centre midfielder in Mason Mount. It should all be up for United, really. However, it looks like they've, gone backwards. And my question is, how many excuses do they have left? Because it's always an excuse of an individual player. It's always Harry Maguire, Freddie McTominay, David De Gea, and now it looks like it's going to be Anthony and Mason Mount. And when does it just become enough that they realise they might not be good enough? The club's infrastructure just isn't good enough, and that needs to improve before they really can progress on the pitch. I really like Ten Hag. I think he's one of the best managers in the world, but I think you've got to make the distinction that you can't compare him to Klopp and Arteta at the start of their reigns with Liverpool and Arsenal. You've got to compare him to Pep when he started at Man City because of the amount of money and where the clubs were at when they took over. It's more similar to Pep than it is to the other two. And if you're looking at Pep, he had a bit of a poor season to start with. He was shipping out a lot of players, and then the second season, that's when they won the title. And if that's going to happen with Man United this season, then fair enough, but that's got to be the expectation, surely, because he's got his players. He's spent 80 million on Anthony, 50 on Martinez. He's brought in a new goalkeeper now, 60 on Mason Mount, 70 on a young striker. So where are the excuses? Because Ten Hag has essentially been given free rein on the transfers, as I've read. So it surely lies on his head. But it does just get to the point where, as an outsider looking in, it gets quite boring just seeing Manchester United fans blaming individual players for the entire club's demise pretty much, because Harry Maguire is a good centre-back. He might not be Manchester United captain level, world-class level, but we've seen him in an England shirt and he's a good centre-back. However, you see him at Man United and you'd think he's one of, it's a Championship League One level centre-back. And then they've got him out, they bought Martinez, Varane, fine, they've got great defence. But then last season it was De Gea that he can't pass, to his defenders, he's not good at distribution. Now they brought in Onana, they didn't have enough depth in midfield, brought in Mason Mount now. So it gets to the point that these individual players, they can't just all be blamed, because it's even if this young Højlund lad is going to be starting up front this season, he's so young and pretty much so unproven that he's a project. He's going to take time to develop, but you can see it 5 or 10 games in when he scored 2 or 3 goals. If it goes that way, then he's going to get absolutely slated by the press, by the fan base, and just in general, really, which is not really fair to the players, and it's a bit of an excuse, really. But the constant thing we hear from Man United fans are the Glazers. The Glazers are terrible owners that run the club into the ground, and so on and so on. And I do see it. I do see how it's frustrating if they've taken money out of the club and they haven't put in their own money. They've just been basically using the revenue from Manchester United because they're one of the biggest global brands in the world. But on the flip side, if you're looking solely on the pitch, they have definitely invested because they've spent billions in the last 10 years. And it gets to the point that, yes, behind closed doors and in the back office and everything like that, they might not run it as well as some would hope, but if you're looking solely on the pitch, which most fans should be looking at, then what have they really, they have improved the squad. I understand the ground and the training facilities, and apparently, in that Ronaldo interview with Piers Morgan, he said they weren't great and they haven't been improved since he left. And that's completely understandable, because if you look at the Spurs training ground now, the Liverpool, the Man City, even the Leicester's one, they all look so much better than Carrington. However, would Manchester United fans, if there are any watching, tell me that would you be happy with a couple of windows not spending that much like Liverpool did after we won the Champions League? Would you be happy not really spending much, getting a Minamino and an Adrian and a Harvey Elliott for a season and improving a couple of sides of the ground and moving to a better training facility or improving the one that you currently have, because I personally can see that being a massive bit of contention for the fan base. I can see it being they haven't spent anything on the team, but then you want it on the training facilities and the ground, and it just goes back and forth or so. So that's my question: what would United fans be happy with? Because you can't do both really. Because if you look at Spurs, when they paid $1 billion for their stadium, the transfer windows just went down and down for a few seasons, and that's what might have to happen for Manchester United. But this might be directed to the more casual, general Man United fans instead of proper diehard ones, because I know that their anger is directed at the boardroom, it's directed at recruitment, it's directed at how they conduct player sales and how they buy players, because that surely is the main issue. It's not the amount of money that they're spending, it's where they spend the money, because if you look at players like Antony, even Martinez, Varane, Casemiro was a good signing, but Jadon Sancho, it just gets to the point where you can't blame all these individual players. You have to blame the people buying them, because obviously, if you have a Jadon Sancho you're trying to develop, you just bought for 70 million. What is the sense in buying a right winger for 80 million who they're going to have to contend against each other? A lot of egos, a lot of the high salaries involved. It just doesn't seem to work, and there doesn't seem to be a analytical, strategic, thought involved really. And I know now it's Richard Arnold as the chief executive officer instead of Ed Woodward, and it's a tough one because Ed Woodward grew the club commercially, when no club has really ever seen before. It's the biggest football club in the world, and that's partly because of Ed Woodward. However, the transfers involved, you always see these articles saying who they could have bought, but apparently Solskjaer really wanted Haaland when he was at Mould, and Ed Woodward just said no, basically. So I get bored of just hearing all these excuses of these individual players and the scapegoats, whereas it's got to be the boardroom that it's the infrastructure of the club that they have to look at. But that's the end of the video. I just get bored of these scapegoats really. I don't want to see Mason Mount, this Højlund, even Onana, because it's always the new players that they bring in are the problem, and they have to change them every season, and it's not actually their fault, because we've seen so many good players come and go through Man United who improved elsewhere because the club just didn't seem to develop them well, or they didn't fit in. But yeah, if you're a United fan, comment, tell me that I'm wrong, tell me that I'm right. If you like the video, if you could leave a like, subscribe, that'd be great. But yeah, see you next time.